Back after a long hiatus. This is Avery with a medieval combat video review. This one was a special request that was submitted. It's Duke Ragnvaldr on the left. I believe he's from the Midrealm, and Duke Kenric on the right, perhaps King Kenric at the time, based on his tabard of the Midrealm on the right. First I want to apologize that it's been so long since I've done one of these videos. I had a couple technical challenges, but I think they should be resolved now. So we're going to go ahead and let's get going. Hopefully I can be relatively quick this time. I say that every time and I never succeed, do I? So here we go. This is at the Pennsic 43 Heroic Champions battle. It's a pretty epic fight, so I'm just going to let it run for a little bit. This is a fight, SCA combat, so a single blow to the head or body wins. Blow to the arm or leg disables the use of that limb. Right off the bat, the very first thing you should notice, they're both obviously shieldmen. They're both left-handed, so watching two left-handers fight is often different than watching two right-handers fight. Often because you see those two shots are the bread and butter of most left-handers, the offside head and the leg wrap. The other thing I'll point out is that the shin and foot are off limits in SCA combat. So you can see that there's a big style difference in how these two fight as well. I would say that the fellow in white, Duke Ragnvaldr, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I haven't met him, so I might have it wrong. Is pretty measured defense, very much using range, comfortable leaning his body, using the sword for a lot of defense. He's got a much smaller shield. And Duke Kenric in the purple, a little bit more of an aggressor, really seems to like that high jumping offside that drops the tip down really low. Really cool shot. You can see him throw it a bunch of times. We've already seen it a few times come out. So the more aggressive fighter here, but still giving ground. I'd say they're both measuring really carefully there. You see him throw a shot that it was actually footwork that got Ragnvaldr out of it, and so some good laughter there between them. See the offside's getting close, but not quite. In this case, because one of them's dropped their weapon after getting struck in the basket hilt, it's honorable combat, so he lets him recover his weapon instead of pressing the advantage. That's the way the SCA rolls. And I don't know what else you might be picking up at this point. I'm noticing distinctions in their footwork style, in their stance, in the sort of position of the hips. So I would say that Duke Kenric a little bit more comfortable getting up and off the ground, leaning forward. Duke Ragnvaldr comfortable leaving his hips forward, leaning back, relying on a little bit of motion and a lot of footwork to deceive his opponent. So that's a really cool move that we'll take a look at. Obviously the crowd liked it as well. And now he's got to fight from his knees to finish off the fight. And that blow gets around the back of the shield. So let's take a look at that fight, and we'll actually break it down a little bit. Now, these two are both obviously very high-end fighters, so there's a lot for us to unpack here, and I'm going to try to go through sort of each exchange in slow motion once we get going here. So, again, if you look at the footwork, you can see this is one of the few opening aggressive shots that Ragnvaldr throws, only it's a feint. And what he does is he's watching for the reaction. He steps forward, the hands high, you see the basket hilt pump up, so that's a feint. You see the sword tip start to move. He wants to read how his opponent's going to react, and you're going to see that the opponent drops the sword this way for a hanging sword guard. Very measured, very controlled fighter on the left. His footwork also, you see him going sideways quite a lot, so he's quite comfortable moving between stances, sometimes going into positions with his feet relatively close together. Not all fighters are comfortable doing that, but he knows his distance really, really well. And here you can see they're both sort of just probing each other's defenses. One of the things that I tend to watch as a fighter is I'll watch the handle, and you can see that they're both sort of getting ready to throw shots, looking for opportunities, but when they're not available, they're not wanting to expose themselves because, every time you attack, you leave yourself open to counterattack. Even with a slightly larger shield, there's very little head protection to be offered once that sword's out of the way. They've both also got really fast shots in sort of an East Coast style guard. What I mean by that is that their hands are out in front of their chest, sort of like in a boxer's stance. As you go to the West Coast, you see more people will hold their sword arm behind their head or over their shoulder, or maybe up so that the sword is flat in front of their face. So when you see a person in this sort of stance, it's sort of a modified A-frame stance, it usually means really fast shots are coming in. Let's take a look at this one. I think this one comes off the basket hilt or it just comes in really light. This is a really cool shot that that you'll see Duke Kenric throw a lot, where he jumps up, punches the hand forward, and it's a pretty quick shot. The tip speed is much faster than the hand speed, and he's pushing that tip down. It's a tough set of mechanics. It almost looks like a thrust, and I think this case it slips off the basket hilt a little bit, or maybe the shield. It's a bad angle to tell. Might hit him lightly in the face, but look at, he's actually off the ground to get that power, and even then he needs a little bit more. This shot comes off the lower edge of the shield and skips down. One other thing I'll point out here, I think there are potentially opportunities for Duke Ragnvaldr to counterattack here, but you can see in this position, with his head cocked to the side, his body at this angle, and hips out this way, and he's sort of stepping this direction, he's in a tough position to get much of a shot off, and his hand isn't really cocked, and you can see his motion is continuing that way. He could potentially be throwing an offside right now. That head is somewhat protected by that shield, and you can tell that that shield's coming up to protect more. So I think he just aborts what would otherwise be a difficult shot, and then here drops the shield at the last moment for the defense. Much easier to drop a center grip shield because it's heavy than to raise it. Even a little shield like that, dropping it's going to be really quick. You can see he keeps stepping in, trying different movements, and I don't know if he's cataloging everything right now, but he's sort of building up a set of responses. What does my opponent do when I step in? So moving forward, he brings his guard up, presses in, and tries to bait a response out of his opponent. So he might be building up a map of responses as he steps in. See, the shield comes up there a little bit. It's a long shield, so it's not too bad if it comes up a little bit. And you can see, I really love seeing this in a fight. They're both making small motions. They're probably real threats. They're not feints. But amongst really high-level fighters like these two, you see those little threats are actually a huge part of the game. That's the first wrap that we see coming up high here. So I really think this is a neat move. He's obviously thrown that offside a couple times. So here what he does, he feints the offside. He's not actually going for it. But Ragnvaldr has to keep that sword up for defense, and instead, with a pretty deep step and then a jump, he tries to throw a wrap around the outside, and Ragnvaldr can read it pretty well and gets the sword, really cleanly in the way. But because he's doing the sword block, he's not really available for a counterattack. But he didn't lift the shield to block it. If he had lifted the shield, his leg would have been exposed. So there's a chance that Duke Kenric would have been able to drop that shot into his leg. So definitely fighting a defensive fight. Definitely a thinking fight, a real chess match. I really like that. See here, he keeps stepping in and baiting. What's he going to do when I step in and bait? When I step in and threaten a motion, what's he do? There we see an offside leg shot. Okay, so now we know that that's coming out in this fight. That's a potential. Just sort of a warding one. And you can see also Ragnvaldr's moving in and out of range a little bit, changing the range up quite a lot. Just an inch into range, an inch out of range, inch into range, inch out. So you see these little motions where he's threatening that fast shot. This one, where they start to laugh, it doesn't look like much. It looks like he just throws a shot from out of range. But if you look at what Ragnvaldr was doing, what made Duke Kenric throw the shot at that point? So the camera's moving a little bit, so we might not be able to leave it precisely. But this is where Ragnvaldr's feet are to start. Now he steps, see he's moving that back leg forward. It looks like a threat. Immediately you can see Kenric start to step back. So as I inch forward, Kenric stepping back because he sees that as a forward motion. It looks like a forward motion. The shoulders and head are coming forward. But it's actually a crescent step, a martial arts step, and he steps to the side instead of forward. So Kenric steps back and reads that as forward motion and throws where his opponent would be, right down the slot, because it looks like this foot is going to move from here to here, but instead it actually moves here and forward. So that's why that shot comes out, and they recognize it, right? These little details are the things that you pick up, if you get the opportunity with a tool like this to watch high-level fights, and I just love to watch it. Triple, that offside shot comes in 3 times here. I couldn't throw this 3 times like he is, and if you watch, let's just go through it in slow motion. one with a jump, two with a jump, a third one with a jump, and then the wrap, although the wrap was coming in flat when it got blocked. And then you see Ragnvaldr does a pretty typical, like a right-hander will often do this if they do a cross block. So when the wrap comes, cross block across the face with the forte of the sword, in this case the basket. And then as soon as you get that in, you round up, throw the offside. That happens to hit the sword, and they continue on. So here we see this like right at the edge of range again. There's that slot shot. Looks like you're stepping forward. I'm going to throw for that gap. But Ragnvaldr's not stepping into it. Again, more of this pacing. You see his stance sometimes long there, and sometimes shortens up and is wide. And then here I think is that cool move. So watch this, if I'm correct and that's the spot. No, it's not just yet. So there's another one of those kind of deep offsides that comes over the top of the shield. Ragnvaldr, again, just using range, body motion, sometimes his sword blade looking very casual about the block, but it's all very calculated. See, there's those threats again, and this time he's coming in. So how did that work? So a lot of this relies on body motion, a lot of it relies on vision, and a lot of it relies on footwork. So we're going to do this a little at a time. So if we go back to the beginning of this motion, you've seen him pop up and threaten a few times. This time he obviously is coming forward. So there's the pop up. You see his front foot actually takes a step back. So if we watch his footwork the first time, or we'll watch his footwork the second time through. So first we'll watch the threat. Here it looks like it's coming up, it's high, it's high, it's high, it's a high threat. He's winding up for maybe an onside shot. His shields come up, it's a high threat, it's a high threat. Now, at this point, this shield starts to come up for defense. The sword's coming up for insurance, right? We've been threatening a high threat a long time, and here's the weapon and the sword. It's going to be pretty difficult to do anything else with that besides maybe drop that into a low onside leg. And also, look at the leg motion now has been straightforward. Just keep that in mind for later. Now that high threat all of a sudden drops basket inside the shield, low, offside to the leg. Under and through. Right? So now we understand the threat goes high until his opponent blinds himself. Now he's blind. And then the threat drops low. But still, how does he get past his opponent like that? And inside the counter wrap? Well, look at his footwork. So we'll start with, the camera's moving a little bit, so the feet may not stay in precisely the right spot on screen. But he goes forward with that leg. Look at the size of that step. Bam, that's a really deep step. The camera's even tracking here. Right, so we've got this back leg has gone all the way from here to here, straight towards his opponent, right? So that's straight in motion, and then look what his right leg does. Pushes hard off that like he's playing like one of those football players who just drives a leg, and it comes towards the camera so you can't quite see what a hard turn that is, but that's like a 45-degree turn because his right leg's now over here. So it's actually a really sharp angle change. If you just watch his feet go back straight forward, plant, and push hard to go sideways. So instead of running straight into his opponent, he's going around him. Now, what else does he get from that? He gets free defense from the wrap because he's inside the killing range of this wrap. Well inside. He's much closer than his opponent thinks he can be. His opponent also thinks his shield is going to stop him from coming straight into him. But look, he gets his, if you watch now his hand, and this is really tricky. I definitely would need to practice before I could do this. The hand starts here, drops around the inside of his own, or over the top of his own shield. So he has to move his own shield out of the way, gets behind his opponent's shield. Now I'm not sure if at this point he's putting much contact in against the shield to hold it open if he needs to. But even if Duke Kenric starts pulling back against that basket hilt, he's going to rip it away and then bam, offside leg. Dropping offside leg. So he's come straight forward. He's threatened high, coming straight forward. Shifted hard to his right. Reached over his shield. Inside his opponent's shield. Drops the offside across the leg and gets entirely under the wrap. Very cool move. Now, I would love to ask him later if a bunch of the a bunch of the baits he'd seen before. We didn't really see Duke Kenric raise his shield a ton before, so I'm not sure if he was able to pattern him into that. But it was a really cool read, and honestly, the first time we saw like a full committed offense in this whole fight, right? Now, this shot, we don't get a really good angle on it, but to me, it looks like a wrap around the shield, just barely gets past the shoulder and tags the body. Pretty standard, I think. You'd see right-handed fighters do this a little bit less frequently, but what he's probably seeing is that this shield is sort of towards the camera a little bit, protecting this area in here. But although he can't see his opponent's back, his sword can obviously get around. And if the tip of your sword can see something, then it's a target. It doesn't matter if your eyes can, right? So he steps in. Might be a little bit of shield contact just to pause the shield just a little bit right at the moment of contact, right there. So he might be doing a little bit of a shield press, but I think what he's doing is he's really holding his shield up and blocking any offside that might be coming in against his head. Kind of tough to see from this angle, but steps in, shield, maybe a little press, a little bit of block, and then a deep wrap. Obviously, left-hander's forte is to throw wraps, especially low wraps. So that gets around the back and for the tag. So yeah, really cool fight, super impressive. This one was at one of the best tournaments in the SCA, the best of the best tournament, I believe, or sorry, Heroic Champions Battle is what it's called, at Pennsic 43. And thank you very much for sending in a request for me to go over this cool video. Once again, also thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long time since I've posted a video. I am going to be getting back into posting them more frequently, and people have been coming up to me at events and sharing encouraging words, offering advice on how I might do these a little bit better. This one hasn't hit 30 minutes, so maybe we're seeing an improvement. Anyway, if you're enjoying these, you can find more Medieval Combat video reviews and other Medieval Combat things on my YouTube channel. Feel free to subscribe if you like. And sometimes people ask, hey, do you mind if I repost or share this? No, I don't mind at all. Please do. In fact, this is based on someone else's video that they shared on the internet. So as long as you think it might be fruitful, feel free to share. All right, thank you.